Hello everyone, welcome back to another story, and thank you for all the love and support. I proposed to her twice, both times she said, "Not now." After the second rejection, I finally told her, then we're done. She never expected what happened next, especially when I walked into our shared office 3 months later with the woman who had truly been waiting for me all along. I gave 5 years of my life to building a future with a woman who treated my commitment like a backup option. The first time I proposed to Maya was on our anniversary at the Cliffside restaurant where we had our first date. I had saved for 6 months to buy a ring that represented everything she meant to me. But when I opened the box, she didn't look at the diamond. She looked at her phone. She said her career was at a critical point and that getting engaged would be a distraction she couldn't afford. I swallowed my pride and slipped the ring back into my pocket, convincing myself she was right. She promised it was only bad timing and that her feelings for me hadn't changed. 2 years later, I asked again. This time it was simple and private, just the two of us in the living room of the apartment we shared. She had reached her professional goals, and I believed the timing would finally be right. But her response was even colder. She didn't let me finish before sighing and saying, "Not now." She told me she wasn't ready for the domestic expectations that came with marriage, and that we were perfectly fine as we were. She wanted the comfort of my presence and the stability of my income. But she refused to give me the one thing I needed to feel secure in our relationship. That night, as she slept beside me, I understood something painful. I wasn't her partner. I was her safety net. I paid the rent, covered the groceries, carried the emotional weight, while she kept her options open for someone she believed was better. The next morning, I calmly told her we were finished. At first she laughed, assuming I was being dramatic after the rejection. But when I started packing, her laughter turned into confusion and anger. She accused me of throwing away 5 years over a piece of paper. But I knew I was saving the next 50 years of my life from becoming a footnote in hers. I moved out that afternoon and cut off all contact, blocking her everywhere so I could heal without her influence. I poured my energy into my work at the architecture firm, and that's where I met Sarah. She was the lead designer on a project I managed, and the difference between them was striking from day one. Sarah didn't see commitment as a trap. She saw it as a foundation. We began as co-workers, became friends, and eventually, something deeper. 3 months after leaving Maya, I had to return to our old shared office to finalize the lease documents. And I wasn't going alone. The building lobby felt smaller than I remembered. The scent of polished floors triggered a brief flash of the life I had left behind. Sarah slipped her hand into mine, steady and reassuring, as we walked toward the elevators. I wasn't there to create a scene or show off my new happiness. I just needed to sign the final papers that would completely sever our financial ties. As the elevator rose to the 14th floor, I caught our reflection in the steel doors. We looked united, two people moving forward with shared purpose. When the doors opened, the first person I saw was Maya. She stood at the reception desk sorting mail, wearing the same distracted expression she always had. At the sound of the elevator, she looked up with a rehearsed smile that vanished the second she saw me. Her eyes fell to our joined hands, and then lifted to Sarah's face. I could almost see her mind racing as she tried to process how I had gone from the man she dismissed to someone standing confidently beside a woman who carried quiet strength. Maya stepped forward, her voice shifting into that soft tone she used whenever she wanted control. She said she had been meaning to call and had realized her timing had been wrong. She even suggested we grab a drink and talk about trying again, now that she was ready to reconsider our future. It was the clearest proof of her narcissism. She truly believed she could place me on a shelf like a trophy, waiting until she felt like claiming me again. I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no interest in hearing excuses. I introduced Sarah as my partner and the new lead on the City Park project, a position Maya had pursued for months. The shock on her face was undeniable. In one moment, she had lost both her relationship and her biggest professional ambition. I told her I was there only for the signatures and that my lawyer had already reviewed the paperwork. Maya looked ready to explode, but the presence of the office staff kept her composed as I guided Sarah toward the conference room. The room felt cold and sterile, like the ghost of a relationship I was finally burying. I sat at the heavy oak table and opened the folder, scanning the final lines that would free me from the last trace of Maya's influence. She followed us into the room, her step stiff, her eyes burning with disbelief and a desperate need to regain control. She sat across from us, hands shaking as she gripped her copy of the documents. She tried to act as if Sarah wasn't there, focusing only on me. As though one intense look could pull me back into her world, she started talking about our 5 years together, bringing up old memories and private jokes that once meant everything to me. She insisted she had only said, "Not now," because she wanted us to be perfect before committing. She even claimed the second rejection was a test of my loyalty, and that she was devastated when I walked away so easily. It was a perfect display of gaslighting, a last attempt to make me responsible for her fear of commitment. I didn't interrupt. I let her words settle into the silence until it grew so heavy she had no choice but to stop. Then I leaned forward and calmly told her that leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my survival. I explained that a partner who turns love into a test or a bargaining tool isn't a partner at all. They're a warden. While she was busy testing me, I was realizing I deserved someone who wouldn't hesitate to build a life beside me. Sarah gently placed her hand over mine, and for the first time, Maya's confidence broke. She understood then that her games had cost her the one person who would have truly stood by her. I signed the final page with a steady hand and slid the folder across the table. I told her that once she signed, we would have no reason to speak again. She stared at the pen like it was something dangerous. Knowing that signing meant becoming a stranger in my life, she made one last attempt, asking if we could talk privately. But I stood and took my coat from the chair. I told her the conversation had ended the second time she said, "Not now." Finally, she picked up the pen and scribbled her name on the dotted line. Her signature looked small and unsteady next to mine. The sound of the folder snapping shut was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. It marked the complete end of her control over my future. She watched us rise to leave, tears filling her eyes, but they didn't move me. I knew those tears were for her loss, not for my pain. We walked out into the office, where the staff pretended to focus on their work, though the tension in the room was obvious. The once untouchable queen of the firm stood there, watching her carefully built empire of manipulation collapse. Sarah and I stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun, and the noise of the city felt like applause rather than chaos. I took a deep breath and felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't realized I'd carried for 5 years. I looked at Sarah and understood why everything felt so natural with her. There were no games, no tests, no endless delays. She didn't need to find herself. She already knew who she was and what she wanted, and she wanted me just as clearly as I wanted her. That simple truth made all of Maya's complicated excuses look like empty performances. 3 months later, I found myself back at the same cliffside where I had first proposed to Maya. But everything felt different because the woman beside me was different. This time, I didn't feel like a man awaiting judgment. I felt like someone who had already found home. I didn't need a diamond or a grand speech to understand where we stood, but I gave her both because she deserved every ounce of devotion I was ready to offer. When I asked her to marry me, she didn't glance at her phone or mention her career. She looked straight into my eyes and said yes before I could finish the question. The story of the man who was told, "Not now," ended that day. A new chapter began with a woman who said, "Right now and forever." I realized my rejections weren't failures. They were detours that protected me until I was ready for something real. I am no longer someone's backup plan or safety net. I am an equal partner in a life built on respect and honesty. The view from the cliff was breathtaking, but for the first time, I wasn't staring at the horizon. I was looking at the person standing beside me. I'm curious. What part of the country are you listening from? And did you know that nearly 80% of our viewers haven't subscribed yet? If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button. And don't miss our next video about a shocking Reddit cheating story, where a husband uncovers the truth about his unfaithful partner.